Hello, guys. My name is Desmond, and I welcome you to my lesson for today. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got a better idea. Otherwise, one might call it one of the best ideas. Ladies and gentlemen, as part of our revision, in order to remind you the distance formula, midpoint, gradient, straight line, and again an angle of inclination. Ladies and gentlemen, let's make use of that sketch in order to derive some questions where we cover all of those things that I've mentioned as part of our revision. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, we are given the formulas in the formula sheet. I'm not really sure if they also give you the formula sheet in grade 10 and 11, but one thing for sure, in case if you're writing your classwork or your tests, you might find that they don't give you the formulas. So ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very much important that you know these formulas by heart. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So for today's lesson, as part of our revision, we're just going to refer to that given sketch in order to answer questions that we are going to derive. So ladies and gentlemen, before I even start with the business of the day, can I please make use of this opportunity to just take you through that sketch over there. Ladies and gentlemen, at all times, please be aware that we draw on a Cartesian plane. Okay, so obviously ladies and gentlemen, your Cartesian plane has got the y-axis and the x-axis. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So we've got that point where your x-axis touch each other, or otherwise this is the point of intersection of your x and y axis. So ladies and gentlemen, we refer to that point as a 0, okay, namely origin. So ladies and gentlemen, that point over there, it's 0, okay. This is not O, but we refer to that point as origin, okay, origin, ladies and gentlemen. But that O, it's not this O, it's 0. Then from 0 in that direction, you go on the positive side of the x-axis. From 0 in that direction, you go towards the negative side of the x-axis. From that point going upwards, you go to the positive side of the y-axis. From that point going downwards, you go to the negative values of the y-axis. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now you're obviously aware that we've got a Cartesian plane, which is something looks like that. A Cartesian plane that has two axes, which is the x and the y-axis. So ladies and gentlemen, as soon as we're done with our axis, we get the coordinates or the points. Okay, we've got point P somewhere there, we've got point Q somewhere there, ladies and gentlemen, we've got point R somewhere there. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So this is P, this is R, this is Q. Okay, so obviously guys, these points have got coordinates. Okay, for us to say that point P is 3 and 7, ladies and gentlemen, we're simply saying that point there on the y-axis it's 7, ladies and gentlemen. That point there it's 3, ladies and gentlemen. So that point is where x is equals to 3, where y is equals to 7. Okay, same applies on this point, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously it means the x value of r, it has to be greater than 3. That's why, ladies and gentlemen, we've got a greater number over there, and obviously in terms of the y value, it has to be a number which is less than 7. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So in that case, we've got 2. Okay, remember guys, nothing is drawn to scale. That's why I've actually indicated that this is just a sketch, not to scale. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. It's just a hand-drawn sketch. Okay, so what it means is that do not use a ruler to measure from that point up to that point, and it seems to be a very short or small distance which doesn't suit to be 2. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the most important information here is that we've got points which has got coordinates, and I'm just showing you in terms of how to interpret these points, ladies and gentlemen. So guys, we've got Q where the x value it's on the negative side of the axis of that x-axis, ladies and gentlemen. So it's -4. Okay, obviously the y value of that point Q, it's on the positive side of the y-axis, ladies and gentlemen. That's why we've got a 6 over there. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, from these 3 points, they then joined these points with straight lines. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. Can you see how they got to that sketch? So ladies and gentlemen, let's now check. In between Q and R, they've got a point over there which is referred to as point T. Okay, so this point T, it also has coordinates where the x value there is 2 and the y value there, it's unknown, ladies and gentlemen. So the y value is named D. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So just in case as we move with this lesson, there's somewhere where we need to calculate the value of D, just know, ladies and gentlemen, that the value of D refers to the y value of point T, which is that point over there along that straight line. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. And again, we've got point S, which is right in the middle of that line. Why am I saying it's right in the middle of that line, ladies and gentlemen? Is because they've indicated to say that line up to there, it's equals to that line from there up to there. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So that point, ladies and gentlemen, it has to be given a name. It's called point S. Okay, it could have been any letter, ladies and gentlemen. They just chose to use S. Okay, so it doesn't necessarily mean that at all times you'll find a point where you've got equal lengths of which that point is referred to as S. It could have been K, it could have been J, it could have been any letter from A up to Z, but obviously it can't be a letter which is already in use, ladies and gentlemen. It has to be a complete different letter from the letters which are already used. Guys, the coordinates are unknown and therefore referred to as x as the x value and y as the y value. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, just know that in case if the x or the y value is unknown, they are going to write a letter. Okay, that's if it's unknown. If it's known, it's going to be a number just like that one over there, ladies and gentlemen. So at point T, we just know the value of x is 2, but the value of D is unknown. So even at S, ladies and gentlemen, they could have used N and M, okay, instead of X and Y. So that means when they say calculate the coordinates of S, you know very well that they just need the value of X and Y, of which the moment you see those represented by letters, then you know it's unknown. So you're most likely to be asked to calculate those coordinates. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm pretty much sure that you fully understand all that I was trying to explain. It was just a matter of taking you through that diagram over there. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, our very first question, let's just say this is question 1.1.1. okay, so the question, let's say maybe determine the distance of QR. Okay, I hope you got the question, ladies and gentlemen. Determine the distance of QR. Okay, so the moment they say determine the distance, then you should remember, guys, the distance formula. You just need to write it down. Okay, obviously it's x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 close squared. The moment they say determine the distance, ladies and gentlemen, you should write down the distance formula. Okay, Most importantly, they're saying the distance of QR. Okay, then you need to write the coordinates of Q and R. Okay, so you can just say Q, it's -4, and again 6, ladies and gentlemen. So R, it's 8 and 2. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. You can now say the distance of Q and R is equals to, so that means the distance that we get is from that point all the way up to that point over there. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now it's just a matter of us substituting into that formula. Guys, remember, when you substitute a value which is negative, please do put it in brackets. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, we can regard R as our second values, and we can regard our Q as the first values. What do I mean by that? That means our x2 will be 8, our x1 will be -4. This will be our y2, this will be our y1. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we are still on the same page. Okay, so guys, let's now substitute. What is our x2? There you go, it's 8. Okay, on the formula it's that minus. What is our y1? I mean our x1. Obviously, ladies and gentlemen, it's -4. So remember, because it's a negative, let's put it in brackets and say -4 and close with that bracket, ladies and gentlemen, and square it. Okay, so guys, in most cases, it's either you get confused or you make a mistake when it comes to this part, where you forget that, you know, that negative over there or that minus is from the formula and that negative is from the value. Okay, so that's why it's very, very much important that at all times when you deal with negative values, you put them in brackets, especially in case where you substitute. Then now we add. We are at that point, ladies and gentlemen, we focus on the y values. Okay, this is our y2, ladies and gentlemen, this is 2 minus, this is that minus, our y1 is 6. You close and you square it. Ladies and gentlemen, very, very much important. In most cases, you might make a mistake of swapping, ladies and gentlemen. Do not forget that these are your first values and these are your second values. Okay, please make sure not to swap those values, ladies and gentlemen. It's very, very much important. Okay, so guys, let's now give the final answer. So it's just a matter of punching all of this on your calculator. Okay, so if you've got a calculator, just punch square root, open bracket, punch 8 minus into -4, you close, ladies and gentlemen, you close again. Okay, then you square it. Very, very much important. You might make this mistake where you just close that negative number and then you square it. In your mind, you think you're squaring for the whole thing, only to find out that you're squaring for just that -4. You're going to get the wrong answer. Guys, let's say plus into 2 minus 6, close, squared. It's equals to, ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting 4 square root of 10. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So that means that length or that distance, it's actually what is it, 4 square root of 10. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me just write it there to say the distance of QR is equals to 4 square root of 10. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm just writing it there just in case if in the future we need that value, we can easily find it over there. Okay, so I'm just going to remove all of this, and now we move to the next possible question. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, for a sketch similar to this one, you might also be asked to determine an equation. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's see what equation are we requested to calculate, ladies and gentlemen. Let's say the question says determine an equation of QR. Okay, equation of QR. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously, write down the formula for determining an equation. Okay, so guys, for this lesson, let's just use that formula. But when we solve exams related type of questions, we will use both the formulas. Okay, this is just to accommodate learners who could be in grade 11. And again, ladies and gentlemen, this is just to do a revision where nothing has to be complicated. I assume so far we are on the same page, ladies and gentlemen. So now, guys, the equation of QR. So now let's write down the coordinates of QR. We've got Q as negative 4 and 6. We've got R as 8 and 2. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very much important that you firstly write the formula, because it's going to guide you in terms of your next step. Okay, can you see, guys? Now we need to find the gradient. Okay, so obviously we know the formula for the gradient is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So obviously we are calculating the gradient of QR. That's why we're going to use the coordinates of Q and R. Okay, let's substitute. So ladies and gentlemen, what is y2? At all times, ladies and gentlemen, just follow the sequence. The question said QR. Okay, then the next letter becomes your second values. Okay, this is x2, this is y2. Your first letter becomes your first values. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's just copy and plug onto the formula. So we've got y2, which is 2, ladies and gentlemen, minus y1, which is 6, ladies and gentlemen, over x2, which is 8, ladies and gentlemen, minus into, very, very much important. Why into? Because we're dealing with a negative number, so we just say negative 4. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you can just punch all of this on your calculator and find the answer. So start with the fraction button, and then from there you can say 2 minus 6, at the bottom is 8, minus into negative 4. It's equals to negative 1 over 3. So, ladies and gentlemen, that means the gradient. So, I'm just trying to think of something, ladies and gentlemen. The gradient of that line of QR is equals to negative 1 over 3. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, can I quickly give you a tip? Okay, let's say this is the Cartesian plane. Okay, so obviously, ladies and gentlemen, you can see the gradient is negative. Why is it negative? It's because that line is in that angle or in that direction. So that means for lines in that direction, ladies and gentlemen, they are going to give us a negative gradient. Okay, for the lines in that direction, ladies and gentlemen, they are going to give us a positive gradient. Okay, so let's just try to check. It means the gradient of Q and R, you can see it's in that direction. It's going to give us a negative gradient. Okay, what about that line, ladies and gentlemen? Obviously it's almost as if it's like that. Okay, so still it gives us a negative gradient. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, what about QP? So that means QP, it has to give us a positive gradient. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. This is just a tip that I thought about a few seconds ago, a few minutes ago, where I thought it's worth it to share it with you guys. So the reason why I'm sharing this, ladies and gentlemen, is because in case if you were to calculate the gradient of that line or that line and you find a positive gradient, then you must notice that something is wrong. Okay, you need to recalculate, check if you substituted correctly, check if you punched correctly on your calculator. Okay, so remember guys, Now we've got our y, which is equals to negative 1x over 3. Okay, remember guys, this is still the same as negative 1 over 3, or otherwise, just so that you're not confused, you can still write it as negative 1 over 3x. Okay, then plus c. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. Whichever way you write it, it doesn't matter, but it's one and the same thing. So guys, you can say at one point. So you're simply saying for this gradient of negative 1 over 3, it passes through these 2 points. Okay, so it's just a matter of you choosing one point. I always advise my learners to choose the simplest point. Can you see that one? It has negative, that one it doesn't have negative. Let's just go with that one where it's just positive values. Okay, so the aim, ladies and gentlemen, is to calculate the value of c. Okay, that c can be represented as q in some textbooks. Okay, do not get confused in place of c when you see q. Okay, so that c or that q, it actually refers to the y value that touches the y-axis. It's actually that point over there. It's a point where a straight line cuts the y-axis. We refer to that point as point C or point Q. Otherwise, if we are calculating or determining an equation of that line, the C value, it's going to be that point over there. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. If we were determining an equation of that straight line of PR, if you extend that line and that line, at some point the y-axis and that line crosses each other. So that point where they crosses each other, sorry, that is our C or Q value. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let's now substitute this into the formula. Most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, most importantly, regard this as one of those important tips. So guys, that point over there, it has to be a positive number. Why? Because it's above the origin. Okay, it cuts the y-axis on the positive side of the y-axis. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's substitute. What is the y value? It's 2, which is equals to negative, what is the x value? It's 8 over 3 plus c. Okay, so obviously, ladies and gentlemen, you see it's going to be equal to, this is a easy maths, ladies and gentlemen. You just take this to the other side and then it changes a sign. Okay, so guys, let's see what have we got. It's more like you've got 2. It obviously changes the sign. It becomes a plus 8 over 3. Okay, that's what you punch on a calculator, which is 2 plus fraction button 8 at the top, 3 at the bottom. It's equals to, ladies and gentlemen, I'm getting positive 14 over 3. I'm not sure if you're also getting the same answer, ladies and gentlemen. So that number in a decimal form is the same as 4.67 rounded to 2 decimal places, which is a 5 to the nearest value. So ladies and gentlemen, what I'm trying to indicate here is that we've got a positive value. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. And most importantly, guys, it has to be a positive value which is between that point and that point. Okay, so obviously, guys, it's closer to 5. So that point over there, the y value is 6, and that point over there, the y value is 2. Okay, so it just has to be a positive number, and again between 6 and 2. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, so guys, let's now write an equation of QR. Okay, so an equation of QR, ladies and gentlemen, it's y is equals to negative 1 over 3x plus 14 over 3. So ladies and gentlemen, you score maximum marks for providing that. This is what the question wanted you to calculate or determine an equation of QR. If you just do all of this and you don't give us this as your final answer, you're going to lose some marks, ladies and gentlemen. Very, very much important. So I assume you fully understand that part, ladies and gentlemen. Can I just write it down to say, let me actually just write the gradient. The gradient of QR, it's equals to -1 over 3. Okay, I assume at some point, in case if we might need that gradient, we'll just find it there, because surely I might forget, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm pretty much sure that you've got some sharp minds. You always remember. So guys, let's now move to question 1.1.3. Okay, so guys, let's say the question says calculate the value of D if T lies on QR. Guys, what an interesting question. So they're saying calculate the value of D if T, which is 2 as the X value and D as the Y value, lies on QR. Remember guys, what was that Y value of that equation? Let's see. The equation was Y is equals to -1 over 3x. It was plus, ladies and gentlemen, what was it? Was it 14 over, let me just try to remember. It was let's say 14 over 2, 14 over 3. Yes, it was 14 over 3, ladies and gentlemen, because I remember it's a number which is closer to 5. So I actually, even though I've just done it just now, ladies and gentlemen, I forgot because I didn't think we would actually get to a stage where we then now need to calculate that D. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the formula that along which that T or D lies. Okay, that's why I had to firstly write that formula. Okay, so it's because you've got a straight line where a point that you are looking for lies on that straight line that has that formula of Y is equals to -1 over 3x plus 14 over 3. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that point T is where x is equals to 2 and y is represented by letter D. So that means, guys, this is obviously x and this is y. Okay, so if I substitute that x value into this formula, it means the y value that I'm going to get is that D. Okay, that's how it works, ladies and gentlemen. If you know a straight line, an equation of that straight line, okay, and they say give us the coordinates of maybe that point over there, and they give you either the x or the y value, just know that if you use that value onto an equation of that straight line, the other value that you get is for the unknown. Okay, so obviously, let's say for example we were given maybe that value of D and this is just x, that the D value is going to be our y value, of which we substitute on this equation to calculate x, which was going to be an x value of that point. But in this case, we're given the x value. So you just say y is equals to -1 over 3. Obviously, this is multiplied by x, which is 2, ladies and gentlemen. That 2, then you just say plus 14 over 3. And answer that you get, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually D. Okay, it's actually that D over there. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's substitute. You can just pull out your calculator and say -1 over 3 into 2 close plus 14 over 3. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, let me see. I just want us to be careful of something, ladies and gentlemen. Before I punch an equal sign, let's try to see if we can be able to estimate that value. So obviously, guys, we know that point is a number which is closer to 5. Okay, so that means the answer that we get is just below that point. Let me just try to redraw this thing, ladies and gentlemen, so that you understand. Okay, so what I'm saying is we've got that line. Okay, so we've got that as point Q. We know the y value of that point Q is 6. Okay, and again we know the y value of that point R over there is 2. Okay, which is that 2. We just calculated previously that value there, ladies and gentlemen, to say it is that value. Okay, what is that value, ladies and gentlemen? At that point we know it's 14 over 3. Okay, so obviously, as you can see, that D, it's actually that point somewhere there, which is below that point. So what I'm trying to make you aware of, ladies and gentlemen, is that we have to find that point which is below that point and just just above that point which is 2. So it means, assuming that this is 5, why am I saying 5? Is because this is 4.667. Okay, so if I round it to the nearest, it becomes 5. Obviously this is 2. So that means when I punch it's equals to there, we have to find a value which is between 2 and 5, or 4.6. Okay, it's equals to, can you see, ladies and gentlemen, it's 4. Okay, so that means D, ladies and gentlemen, it's actually 4. Okay, so guys, these are the type of information that I find very much interesting, because if you are able to analyze and interpret those given sketches, ladies and gentlemen, it gives you the confidence in terms of knowing whether your answer is wrong or correct. Okay, so guys, in answering the question, remember this part, it was just to explain to you how you interpret these drawings, ladies and gentlemen. So that means our y value was 4. Then guys, you can just say T is 2 and 4. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. In this way, you are going to score maximum marks. So now let's just say 4 over there. Okay, so guys, in case if you are in exam and they don't want you to write on the question paper, you can just do your rough sketch and write all the values that you get on your rough sketch. Okay, just so that you can easily refer to the values in case if you need them. Okay, so now let's move to question number 4, where they might say determine determine the let's just determine the length, ladies and gentlemen. Determine the length of let's say the length of QP. Okay, so that means we are actually determining the length of QP. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, because they are saying we need to determine the length. The tricky part here is that they said the length, but we know this is the same as the distance. Very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So you still write the same formula. You can either say the length or the distance, it's equals to x x2 minus x1 squared, y2 minus y1 close squared. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, it's very, very much important that you know these formulas by heart. Okay, very, 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 very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So now I just remembered something, ladies and gentlemen. I think we have used this formula on our very first question, but it's fine. Let's just quickly do it. So that means you've got what is it? You've got your Q, which is negative 4 and 6. You've got your P, which is 3 and 7. Okay, so obviously guys, it's just a matter of substituting. Remember guys, if you take this as your second values, this will be your y values. So obviously x2 is going to be 3 minus into negative 4. I hope you remember this stage, ladies and gentlemen. We substitute in brackets, then you just say plus your y2, it's obviously 7 minus 6 close squared. Then you just say square root on your calculator into 3 minus into negative 4. You close 2 times, ladies and gentlemen. You squared, then you add into 7 minus 6. You close, you squared. It's equals to, we're getting 5 square root of 2. Okay, let's also write it there to say, the length of QR is equals to 5 square root of 2. 5 square root of 2. Okay, so guys, I just had to be quick on that one because we've already done a similar question. It's just using different coordinates or different values. Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, let's move to a 1.1.5 where you might be requested to determine the coordinates of S. Okay, what do we know about the coordinates of S, ladies and gentlemen? Let's see. We know already that S is the midpoint of Q and P. Okay, so do not get confused by the manner in which a question is asked. They are just saying determine the coordinates of S, but in your mind you must know that that point S, there's something special about it because of these 2 lines. Okay, so that means it cuts this Q and P into half. Okay, because it cuts into half, then it means S is the midpoint of Q and P. Ladies and gentlemen, it means you can use the midpoint formula to calculate S. Okay, remember guys, S will then be x2 or x1. It doesn't really matter. Okay, let's just continue as x2 plus x1 divided by 2, and same applies, ladies and gentlemen, y2 plus y1 divided by 2. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, you can just substitute. Let's now substitute. What is x2, ladies and gentlemen? We can maybe use P as our second values. So that means x2 over there is 3 plus, what is our x1? Ladies and gentlemen, in brackets. Very, very much important. Do not make this mistake, ladies and gentlemen. A lot of you guys are most likely to make this mistake. Okay, so now, ladies and gentlemen, what is our y2? Obviously, it's 7. Okay, plus our y1 is 6 divided by 2. Okay, so guys, we just give the coordinates now. Ladies and gentlemen, in most cases, when you determine the coordinates of the midpoint using the midpoint formula, you just need this step, that step of substitution, and the final step of providing an answer. Okay, so obviously, ladies and gentlemen, this and that, it's minus 1, so you're most likely to have let's see, there's something that I just need to quickly verify, ladies and gentlemen. This is 3 minus that, we get minus half. I'll just explain to you something shortly, ladies and gentlemen. So now let's proceed to that one. Obviously, it's 13 over 2. is 13 over 2. So ladies and gentlemen, something that I wanted to actually indicate to you is that, remember, in the beginning of this lesson, I've just indicated that drawing is hand drawn, and it's not really drawn to scale. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen, that you understand that part, because it plays a major role in making you understand why I'm having this concern. Okay, so guys, something that I want you to notice. Okay, what I want you to notice is the fact that the x value is negative, but I made a point over there which is on the positive side of the x-axis. Okay, so that means, ladies and gentlemen, if we were to draw it to scale, it was actually going to be something like this. Still not drawn to scale, but this is Q, this is P. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that point S is actually somewhere there, okay, on this side of the x-axis, so that it makes negative half. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. I assume you fully understand what I mean. I'm actually glad that I made that sketch hand drawn, because it makes you aware of how you should be able to interpret your answer. Ladies and gentlemen, it has to make sense. If it doesn't make sense, then it means something went wrong. And most importantly, you should be able to understand exactly what went wrong. Ladies and gentlemen, in one of my Facebook posts, I mentioned that at solving exam papers, we measure the level of intelligence by the number of relevant mistakes made and corrected over a short space of time. Okay, so what I mean by that, ladies and gentlemen, is that you become more wiser when you make more mistakes. Okay, the reason why I made it, ladies and gentlemen, during my high school times is because I was very much obsessed in making as many mistakes as possible. I believe in the school where I did my high school, I'm the person who made the most mistakes ever since that school was built, ladies and gentlemen, because through those mistakes, I learned how to correct those mistakes. I learned how to notice when making a mistake. And most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, a lot has benefited from my mistakes because I made them aware of possible mistakes. So in each and every question that we're dealing with, they were able to notice and remember the type of mistakes associated to those particular chapters or associated to those specific questions. So they were also able to notice when they were making a mistake. So for me, ladies and gentlemen, during my exam times, there was no time for making a mistake. I was well aware of all relevant mistakes. I corrected it while the time was still on my side. So that's why, ladies and gentlemen, in one of my live lessons, I do mention that we become very much lucky when I'm the one making mistakes, because you won't have to make those mistakes in your exams. So ladies and gentlemen, this one, it wasn't a mistake. It's just a drawing which is not drawn to scale. Okay, but let's just assume that it's just a sketch which is not to scale, because the calculation is correct but the representation on the drawing is not correct. Okay, so that means, ladies and gentlemen, let me just remove that point over there and say maybe our point is somewhere there, even though it won't make sense. Why? Because when you look at the distance from there to point S, it's shorter than the distance from there to there, whereas that S represents the midpoint. It represents the midpoint between those 2 points. Ladies and gentlemen, let's now you know, maybe make use of this formula, the midpoint formula, to determine you know, the midpoint of P and R. Okay, so midpoint of P and R, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, same procedure. You can still say x1 plus x2 and y1 plus y2. Okay, midpoint of PR, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, you know your coordinates, you just substitute. So obviously, you can take 3 as your x1 plus 8 as your x2 divided by 2. You take 7 as your y1 plus 2 as your y2 over 2. Okay, so M of PR, ladies and gentlemen, this is 11. So it's going to be 11 over 2. This is 9 over 2. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, that means somewhere in between those 2 points, you've got these coordinates. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. Guys, I hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I did. So ladies and gentlemen, remember, this was just a revision. Okay, it's just a revision where I take you through all that you've done on your previous lessons. Okay, so this lesson is actually suitable for let me see, I think it's also suitable for grade 10s, because that's where you start learning this type of formulas: the distance formula, the midpoint formula, you know, the gradient, straight line, and again angle of inclination. Ladies and gentlemen, let me just use this remaining minutes to explain to you what we mean by angle of inclination. Okay, this is the y-axis and this is the x-axis. Okay, and let's just say we've got two graphs. Okay, this is the graph of f, this is the straight line of G. Okay, remember guys, you know, these straight lines are represented by letters as well. So you normally have the graph of G, the graph of F, or the graph of H, or whatever. Okay, in most cases they like using these letters to represent the functions. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, the angle of inclination is that angle formed between the x-axis and the straight line. Okay, so for that line of G, this is the angle of inclination. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. So for that line, this will be the angle of inclination. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, remember, this is going to be a negative gradient. I think I've explained this part, and this is going to give us a positive gradient. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, remember, this is the formula where we say the gradient is equals to tan angle. Okay, so we normally use this formula to calculate the angle of inclination. So that means, let's say the gradient of that line is 2, and the gradient, let me just say m of f is equals to 2. Remember, m represents the gradient. Then m of g is equals to, let's say, -4. Remember, it has to be a negative, it has to be a positive. So let's say you want to calculate, as an example, ladies and gentlemen, that angle over there. So that means obviously this is 2. Okay, then it's 2, you equate it to tan angle, which is that angle over there. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, I'm not sure if you remember a second function. So that's when you want to calculate the angle. Second function of 2, it gives you an angle. And that angle, ladies and gentlemen, you should be careful, because sometimes you might find that you get that angle, ladies and gentlemen. Sometimes you might find that you get that angle. Okay, but you know, in a situation like this, if you want to calculate that angle, but on your calculator you get that angle, you know, ladies and gentlemen, it's just 180 minus theta, let's say, is equals to alpha. Okay, so for example, this angle, ladies and gentlemen, it's greater than 90. If you punch this on a calculator and you get an angle which is less than 90, it means it's that angle. So you just have to say 180 minus that angle in order to get this angle. But if you get an angle which is greater than 90, then you know it's that angle. How do I know? A very good question, ladies and gentlemen. This is that x-axis. This is 90 degrees. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, if I've got a line which is moving like that, obviously that angle, can you see, it's greater than 90. This is 90 and it extends up to there. Okay, very, very much important, ladies and gentlemen. Otherwise, if I've got a line like that, okay, obviously this angle, you can see, ladies and gentlemen, it's less than 90. Okay, but if it's an angle that crosses this line, you know it has to be greater than 90. If it's less than, it's obviously less than 90. Let's just punch this and see. Remember, your calculator has to be in degrees. Then let's say shift turn to it's equals to, we get 63. Okay, so an answer that we get is 63 degrees. So ladies and gentlemen, 63 degrees, it's an angle which is less than 90. Okay, that means it's actually that angle over there. So for us to get this angle, we just say 180 minus 63 degrees, which is equals to, let me just say minus 180 and see an angle that I get, which is equals to 116.5, rounding it off, then it makes it 7. Because it's an angle, ladies and gentlemen, you say degrees. Okay, so guys, this is just a lesson for another day. Here, I'm just introducing you to this formula. So I'm going to do a special lesson where I explain in detail all of this. And you're going to notice most of this when we solve exam-related equations. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, on my next lesson, I believe I should be teaching something else, of which I encourage you to watch a lesson. So I'm going to make this lesson available for grade 10s, 11 and 12s. Okay, but this lesson is actually a revision for grade 12 learners, but I made it suitable for grade 10s, 11 and 12s. So guys, for grade 10s, for grade 11s, I'm going to make it available for you, but the next lesson will be specially for grade 12s. I'll be focusing on equations of a circle. I just forgot if this chapter is also there in grade 11. If it is, then I'll make it available for you guys. I'll just double check. If it's not, then it's only going to be available for grade 12s. So ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this lesson as much as I did. My name is Desmond and I'm out.